many veterans have we got in here tonight? First responders, firemen, police department. How many in here? Everybody raise your hand if you serve our country in one way or form or another. Really appreciate everybody showing up tonight. This is a real great, this is really, really cool. Thanks to David for getting this ball rolling. And thanks for Mr. Bowden for helping and having the place for us. All veterans should salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I'd like to thank Gail and Randy Bone for providing the historical ballroom, Hankwitz Heating and Pat at Hungry Howard for the pizza on this. This isn't a political type gathering. We know our politicians on both sides, not all of them, but most of them have forgotten about us. Fortunately, we have a man that's willing to go down away from his family on his own to find out what's going on, to help us and to protect us. I appreciate it. I think we also have our prosecutor, Beth Hand, in the house. You here, Beth? Okay, thank you, Beth. On it. My story here is Randy and I read in the paper that Sheriff Cole is up in Manistee talking about this, and we're like, our sheriff's up in Manistee? So we went up and listened to it, and like, wow. And we started telling people, and they all kept saying, we want to go, can you do something? So got a hold of Sheriff Cole, and you just got back again from the border, didn't you? And he was kind enough to give up his time. To me, this is a personal thing. Not a while back, probably about 6 months ago, my nephew was at his folks on the other side of the state, and they went to leave, him and his wife, and a 3 and a 6-year-old. He had on his phone, went crazy, he had a security system. And on his phone, the security system went off. He had 4 men in his house. Guns drawn, no mask, breaking into his house. They knew he had a security system, they didn't care. His wife was a professional photographer. She lost all of her equipment. They stole everything in the house. And when they did get, fortunately, they stayed long enough at his folks because they could have been there or got there when they came in. What happened is they got there and the police department was notified, but they hit the areas. And they hit this area and they lambasted it so the police couldn't keep up with all the robberies. And when they got there, they told him, he said, this is a Venezuela gang. They come in, they fleece everything, and they leave town. So to me, it's a personal thing for him. Unfortunately, I can say him and his 2 sons aren't there at this time. So I really feel what Kim's about to present to us, which we all need to know what's going on. So like I say, I thank you for everything you do for us. I mean, you're one of the hardest working, I don't know when you sleep, but thank you, Kim.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out. You in the back, I think what we'll do is I got a Bluetooth speaker I set there by Slim. What I may do is just set this mic by that so you can hear. Can you all hear me in the back okay? Okay, we'll set the mic by the speaker there so you can hear the video. On everything that you're going to see tonight is video or photos that I have shot myself while in McAllen, Texas. You will also see a picture that is only the picture. I was in Israel in May. God has been incredibly good to me, and I don't know why. Maybe it's for this kind of event here. Back in May, I was contacted by the National Sheriff's Association. I'm on their board of directors, and I serve on their border security committee. I got a call on a Sunday afternoon from the deputy director of NSA and was invited to Israel. And I said, I'll go to Israel. And I said, I gotta talk to my wife first. And that was a mistake. My wife is like, you're not going to Israel. And I'm like, I think I'm going to Israel. And my mom is up here, and my wife even sicked my mom on me to tell me not to go. But I went to Israel for 6 days. There were 5 U.S. sheriffs invited there to learn about the terrorist attacks of October 7th. And what played out in Israel, and I appreciate Randy saying it's not political. This event is not political. There's a colossal failure on both sides of the aisle with what has taken place. on our southern border and our behavior around the world. I do have a presentation on Israel as well that I have not went out and showed folks yet, but you're going to get a sneak peek at one of the photos. So I was in McAllen in September of 2023, McAllen, Texas, and I went back again last week. I flew out on a Monday morning, and I flew back Wednesday night. My flight was delayed. I don't mind flight delays, but when you're stuck on the plane for 3 hours, that's a son of a gun. And everything, my trip to Israel was fully funded by a private organization. My 2 trips to McAllen I paid for out of my own pocket. So if any of you are concerned about your tax dollars doing something like that, I paid for everything out of my own pocket for McAllen. My meals, my airfare, the hotels were paid for by a private organization, but otherwise I paid for stuff. So I want to share with you tonight a little bit about what we learned in McAllen. Every picture you see, every video you see is stuff I've shot, except for one. And I was given permission to show that video, and that was part of an arrest report in Phoenix, Arizona. And I have permission to show that video, and I'll show that to you too. So I wonder, can you all see that, or should we dim the lights a little bit? Can we, hey, I don't know where Randy went. You know how to do that? So, this was from a trip I had to Washington, D.C. in 2019 as part of another border security meeting. These fine guys here are Texas sheriffs. And in 2019, I learned that every county is a border county. Every state is a border state. Here in Mason County, recently we had a fentanyl death, and as a sheriff, it was good for me because it was a late night death, so not a lot of people knew about it. There wasn't a lot of scanner traffic. But at that event, we recovered nearly 60 grams of pure fentanyl. On a brick, came right straight out of the southern border. That fentanyl would have killed 28,000 people had it made its way to the streets. We have 29,300 people that live here in Mason County. I get that 60 grams on the big scene isn't a lot, but here in Mason County, that's a lot of fentanyl. So we are a border county, and we need to rally with our folks as sheriffs. Us sheriffs need to stand together, and these fine gentlemen here are Texas sheriffs. Okay, I told you there was only one photo I was going to show of Israel. This is a photo I took while I was touring their border security training facility on the morning of October 7th. These fine 12 men were sent to southern Israel because of some sort of uprising. Nobody knew what was really going on. They were killed before they ever got out of their cars. And we'll talk about that at the end. You'll see how that comes to full circle. So, what does an unsecure border create for us as citizens? It's a humanitarian disaster, first and foremost. I believe everybody has a right to live a free life. I do. I don't hate Hispanic people. I don't hate anything but evil. That's all I hate. And I think everybody should have a chance at the American dream, but the reality is those that are coming across the border unlawfully, they're not living the American dream. They're being put into safe houses, they're sold into sex trafficking. It takes the average immigrant that is going to pay the cartel to bring them to America, it takes them 8 to 13 years to pay off their debt. And if you think the police have good intel, the cartels have far better intel than law enforcement. They know everything about your family, they know about your children. While I was in Texas, I learned of a person that had paid the cartel to come across. When he didn't pay his debt, the cartel came into America, took him back to Mexico, and skinned his daughter alive before his own eyes. They are barbaric. It is a criminal enterprise. We'll get into that a little bit as well. And it's a threat to national security, last but equally important. Humanitarian disaster. This fine gentleman here is Sheriff Benny Martinez. He is the sheriff in Brooks County, Texas. Brooks County is 70 miles north of McAllen. Texas 281 runs from McAllen up to San Antonio through Brooks County. There is a checkpoint in Brooks County northbound on Texas 281 to check vehicles going northbound. You can see here, as of last week in Brooks County alone, and there are 254 counties in Texas. In Brooks County alone, since 2021, Sheriff Martinez has recovered 273 dead bodies. He has himself and 5 deputies, that's it. They have hundreds of active missing person reports in Brooks County. And again, it's the sheriff and 5 of his deputies, that's all he has. Let's see. This is a video that was shot that I have permission to show you of what immigrants are facing trying to get to America.
Three. My money.
Did you see any guys dressed like him?
Yeah, when I'm in the sniper, 2 guys and 1 unarmed went heading to get them.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Más adelante entre ellos también, claro. Más adelante también salen así de monte. Que fue que la hizo que la animal. Tiene ojos claros morenos. No tiene cabello amarillo, pero tiene los ojos claros. Ah, sí, hay uno que yo le pregunto.
They made her get naked and open up her legs and get in the middle of everybody and show everybody how she was.
Los niños van traumados, le dan golpes a su papá delante de ellos.
Yeah, it's terrible, man.
Es muy fuerte, le cree que no está muerto porque
Okay. So just update. We're at the basically a makeshift fob here. Guys dumped their gear. Rest of one of the center front guys. Rest have made their way up the river. We're being told the robbers are about 15 minutes upriver. We're moving up. We're in positions. So update. First scouting. Mission by center front. Came back negative. It sounds like they're further up the trail, so we're rejoining them. And we're gonna just try to surprise them all together. Pray for us. The robbers are back there? None of them are with you? There's nobody hiding with you?
As we get closer, we find a young Colombian man acting very suspicious on the side of the river. His body language and his story don't add up.
You think that was one of them? You think that was one of them? Yeah, that's a lookout for sure.
And now, only a couple of 100 yards from their location, we split up again for a surprise ambush.
Guys, we moved up. Trouble, guys. They're just over this hill. Got one guy in position, right? Got 3 more going up the other side.
Ben and Oscar move up with the Embedda guy to film the operation.
They got him. That's it.
So in that video, gang members were, they were raping and robbing immigrants trying to come north from Panama to our southern border. And they got in a gunfight as they tried to arrest them. They walked up on them raping a girl. And the one guy pulled a gun and they got in a gunfight. They killed one of the bad guys and took the other two or three into custody. So.
Venezuelano, if you're wondering what open borders looks like, here's one example. Trash everywhere. Unbelievable. Trying to bring kids through this. Crazy about this spot. So this is a marker where two Centerfront officers were killed by a tree that fell on them. And down below the cross, you have all this money from all over the world. And the people that Centerfront said that drop it, they don't know the significance of the cross. They just think it's going to bring them good luck. But the other thing you see here, unfortunately, are mounds of condoms. So apparently, it's not just a place to drop your money. It's a place where guys have girls drop their pants. Unfortunately, this is what you see all throughout here. Holy.
The one thing, I don't know if you caught it, the one thing they talked about was the money and then IDs. On the Mexican side of the border, on Mexico's side of our southern border, they're recovering passports, they're recovering IDs. How many of you would travel to another country and drop your passport? What would you do if you were in Canada and lost your passport? You know, when my kids were little, my son was a hockey player, and we went to a tournament up in the Sioux. And my wife had this great idea that she wanted to go up into Canada and do some shopping, and we did, never thinking that we needed birth certificates for the kids to get back into the States. And the Customs and Border Patrol guys on America's side weren't going to let my 8-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter back into the country. And I said, well, I don't have them. I'm sorry. We went up north. We didn't get questioned going north. We got questioned coming back south. And, you know, the guy was like, well, I can't let the kids in. I'm like, well, feed them well and take care of them. I don't know what to tell you. I can't give you what I don't have. So what they're doing is they're being encouraged by cartel members and NGOs, non-government organizations, to lose their IDs and assume a new ID when you come into America. And you've heard a lot. We're going to talk in a couple minutes about the Venezuelan gang, the Trans de Aguas. And what they're doing is Venezuela is scrubbing criminal records of these folks before they come to America. So there's no way for American authorities to check them in the database. And so they come here and they get into the border. If they get caught, what happens is they say, I'm Kim Cole. And Customs and Border Patrol has no way to verify who that person is. So they go in the database as Kim Cole or Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or whoever. And then they're released into the United States. That's how it's playing out. So this whole thing with the IDs really blew my mind, because I flashed back to my kids in the Sioux at the border that day. I mean, I would freak out if I was in another land and I lost my ID. Okay. All right. This is a number I got. This was a photo I took off the slide while we were in McAllen recently. You can see the encounters between the two administrations, a 465% increase in traffic. And total encounters under the Trump administration was 1.7 million, and under the current administration, over 10 million. These are Border Patrol numbers. These are federal numbers. Okay? Known gotaways, 400,000 under the previous administration, 1.9 million. Deaths, 1,022, 2,740, and then it gets down into the Rio Grande City sector and whatnot. So, and those are Customs and Border Patrol numbers. So this is what we talk about the humanitarian disaster. When we look into it a little further, this is what they're dealing with. This is what migrants are dealing with when they're trying to come into America. It's a very thick, it's a very harsh, it's a very unforgiving land that they're trying to get through. And when I talked about Brooks County and that checkpoint that's in Brooks County for northbound traffic, what they're doing, when we were busing up to Brooks County to tour this ranch where I took these photos, I noticed DPS troopers, there were like 4 troopers working southbound traffic. So they were in the median, but they were facing the southbound direction. And when we got to the ranch where we were at, I asked the sheriff, I said, why is DPS troopers working southbound? And he said, well, what they do is what the cartels will do, they come into Texas and they go to San Antonio, Houston, Austin, Dallas, and they're stealing dually pickups. And they take the dually pickups and they go southbound down into McAllen, and whatever the flavor is, whatever they're running for that season, if it's guns, drugs, or humans, they load them in the dualies because law enforcement, it's very difficult for the police to pursue these big dually trucks because they're going off-road and they're running through this stuff and the cruisers can't do it. And what they do south of that checkpoint is they will stop, the cartels will stop, they'll kick the people out of the vehicles and say just go around the back side of that checkpoint and we'll pick you up on the other side. And unfortunately they get lost, it's dark, they can't figure out where they're at. 3 days before we were at that ranch, and what they have is they have sensors in the desert there to track, to alert Border Patrol if there's foot traffic in the area. And 3 days before we were at this ranch, they captured 5 that tried to circumvent that checkpoint. 3 were wanted for murder out of Mexico. That is a 9-foot, 8-inch, 68-pound rattlesnake. So not only are they struggling with the terrain, they're dealing with rattlesnakes. And Sheriff Martinez was telling me that the reason they have so many missing person reports in his county is because the wildlife is just ruthless. The mountain lions, the coyotes, and the wild hogs, they eat everything, and they leave very little behind. So you don't, and I'm not going to show you anything inappropriate, but I saw videos of dead bodies in the desert in Brooks County. I saw a picture of a girl with no clothes on that they'd hung from a tree after they had raped her in America. So we talk about the criminal enterprise, the drugs that are coming across. And I'll show you another photo here in a second, but it's kind of hard to read, but this was in Lukeville, Arizona on July 1st, 2024. A 20-year-old Arizona man who was a U.S. citizen was arrested at a checkpoint where he was found to be in possession of 4 million fentanyl pills. 4 million fentanyl pills. And that was over 1,000 pounds. And then over here is just some pictures of that they've taken off pills. They'll make like a cake, and then they'll have the pills layered underneath in bags. And when the police check the cake, if you don't actually stick stuff into the cake, you won't notice the pills underneath that are in the pan. And they do this, it's every day. It's all day, every day, what law enforcement is dealing with down there. So Governor Abbott in Texas started what's called Operation Lone Star. And in the parentheses are state trooper numbers only for DPS. What I want to show you is the fentanyl. 1,900 pounds of fentanyl was seized at this one checkpoint. But what's interesting is In 2014, law enforcement had its first encounter with fentanyl. We are 10 years later, okay? And in 2014, during that traffic stop, a police officer had a substance on a traffic stop. He had no idea what it was. It went to the State Police Crime Lab in Texas. It took them 3 weeks to identify what it was. And here we are 10 years later, and fentanyl is killing our kids. They're killing our spouses. Many of them don't even know what they're getting themselves into. It is exploded on the American scene. And I don't care who you are, I don't care what walk of life you come from, no one is exempt from heroin, meth, fentanyl, these things. It knows no boundaries. I've had really, really good people in my office sobbing at my desk because their son or daughter got caught up in fentanyl and sadly passed away. And that's happening right here in Mason County. Our prosecutor will tell you, and I appreciate the fact that she's taken such a hard line in dealing with drug dealers and getting these people off our streets, because they're killing people every day. They're killing people every day. Criminal enterprise, let's talk about the human trafficking side of the criminal enterprise. Whoops, what did I do? Whoops, now what did I do? Okay, so Operation Lone Star is, I think it's 1,300 DPS troopers that work Operation Lone Star. They are specifically assigned to dealing with the immigration issues, the illegal issues, the illegal immigrants coming across the border. And what Texas has done is they have passed a state law where the federal government is failing to address what is going on. They've made it a criminal trespass. So if you are in Texas breaking a law, there's a trespass element that can go with that as well. But DPS troopers have interrupted 369 stash houses. Over 3,800 illegals have been saved from human trafficking. And then it just talks about, there was 30 found dead in the southwest sector of Texas. This number is really exploded this year. The missing children on our southern border. Current federal numbers from Customs and Border Patrol put the number of missing children from the southern border at over 330,000. 330,000 missing kids that came into the country and the government lost them. I don't know how. That makes my blood boil when you think of these things that are going on. And it's not acceptable. And it's not political. There's plenty of blame to go around with what's going on our southern border. But 300, and I'm telling you, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but we are tracking people all the time, right here in Mason County, that are trying to pick up your children. It's all the time. And I'm not going to get into any more of it than that, but the media's been good to me, because they'll say, hey, we saw this person that was picked up for solicitation of a minor, but you don't give any information on it. I said, don't worry about it, because we're still actively investigating these things. Okay, so humans are the new commodity on the southern border. There's an estimated 439,000 encounters or apprehensions when it comes to human smuggling. If you figure the cartels are getting $1,000 per illegal they're trying to traffic across the border. $1,000 is low. It's probably closer to $5,000. But if you just take it at $1,000, the drug cartels are making about $2.2 billion just in trafficking humans. That's just human beings. That's not the drugs, that's not the guns, that's just humans. This young guy here, I tried to recruit him to come to work for me when I was down there, but he says Michigan's too cold. Good-looking young Texas trooper. And I jokingly asked him, I said, how many pursuits did you get in? He covers an 80-mile stretch of Texas 281 north out of McAllen. I said, how many pursuits have you been in September? Jokingly, I said this. And he kind of looks up at the sky and he goes, in September, so far in September, I've had 8 high-speed chases. And he held his hand out like this, and you could see the cuts on his hands from chasing people into the picker bushes where, you know, they're running through scrub brush and thorns and all this other stuff. But like I mentioned, southbound traffic on 281, they're dealing with stolen vehicles and money, and northbound, it's guns, drugs, and humans. This guy here is a super cool guy. He's also a Texas trooper. And what he does is he liaisons with the ranchers, because the farmers, the ranchers down there, they're losing cattle all the time. You know, when you come into the country, you get a cell phone, you get a bus ticket, you get a gift card to get by that you and I are paying for. But then what they do is they feel like they're tracking them with their phone, so they throw the phone out in the bush. And then the cattle are eating the phones, and they're losing cattle. But the other thing they're losing is they're losing fences. When these dually trucks go off-road, when the police try to pull them over, they're crashing through the fences. And I know we got some farmers here. You start losing fences, it adds up, right? It adds up. So state of Texas is paying the farmers to have their fences mended. And what he does is he has a fence mending kit with him in his cruiser, and he will give a temporary mend to the fence, and then he gives a card with a form, and then the rancher fills that out, gets the fence fixed, and then the state of Texas will pay for the fence to be properly repaired. Threat to national security. You can't really see it here. I got a better picture close up. But this is the border wall in McAllen. Monday when I got into Texas, I learned when it rains in Texas, it rains really, really hard. I had the morning kind of free. There was the La Plaza Mall down the road from where I was staying. It was about a half mile away. I walked down to the mall. I walked back. I got caught in a pouring rainstorm. And I got back to my room. I was drying off, and a buddy sheriff of mine, Mike Lewis, he's a sheriff in Maryland. He calls me and he's like, hey, can you come down to the lobby? I need to talk to you. And he was all serious. I'm like, yeah, I'll be right down. So I had shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops on that I changed into. And there's an Uber sitting out in front of the hotel. And he's like, you want to go on a helicopter ride? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go on a helicopter ride. He goes, I got a buddy of mine who's a Texas trooper, helicopter pilot, and they got 2 DPS helicopters coming in to pick us up. So I was one of 4 guys that got to go up on the helicopter. And it was kind of owly, because when we got to the McAllen airport, the helicopters couldn't land because they were under visual flight rules, and they couldn't come in because it was raining so hard. So they were circling, waiting for the weather to clear. And I'm like, you know, Mike, I'm good. I don't need to go up in the helicopter. I didn't even have my wallet on me. So, but anyway, we went up in the helicopter, and what I'll show you another picture of is along this fence, the border wall, are breaks. There's 100-foot breaks all over the place. And I said, why is the fence not solid? And he said, well, part of it was when they were building the wall, they had to have openings in it so they could get the equipment through while they were working on it. And then when the Biden administration came in and they nixed the border wall, they just left it the way it is. So you don't have to walk very far to find an opening in the wall. And I got a better picture of that coming up right there. Yeah, that's all over the place. That is all over the place in McAllen, Texas. Islands along the Rio Grande, like you see right here, it's a photo I took, are controlled by the cartels in Mexico. Mexico lays claim to the islands in the Rio Grande. And what they're doing is they are smuggling their drugs, and they're smuggling humans onto these islands, and then they lay in wait. And they wait for the opportunity. It's less of a gap to cover, right? So they don't have to go through the entire river. They can come across these little skinny areas. That's Mexico. This is the United States. So So this right here, you can see it real well, but right here, these blue tarps, that is a Haitian encampment on Mexico's side of the Rio Grande in McAllen, south on the Mexico side of McAllen. Those are Haitians waiting to come across. And if you look up here, there's a large camp right here that is Haitians waiting to come across. The problem is the mayor and it sounds like the police chief in McAllen are towing a pretty tight line on who's coming across the border. So we got to go out on a boat patrol with DPS troopers. Their tactical team patrols the Rio Grande in McAllen. And, they tell us, they said, well, they brief us in the morning and they said, hey, just so you know, the cartel knows there's sheriffs on the border, but you're going to be fine. We got helicopters up. And there were Border Patrol helicopters up and DPS helicopters up. You'll be fine. And I'm like, they're not going to let anything happen to us. I mean, there's 50 U.S. sheriffs, we'll be fine. And we come around, and I'm like, we're not going to see anything. Well, we come around a bend, and the operator of the boat says to me, I'm sitting next to the guy, and he's like, this guy's right there, a cartel. And these people here, they're trying to get across the river. And I stood up like a dummy and took a photo of him. And that guy's giving me the finger upside down, which means death, and that guy's giving me the finger right side up, which means I don't like you. So, yeah, that's a picture I took of cartel giving me the finger on the Rio Grande. So when we talk about the gangs that you've been hearing about on the news, this violent gang out of Venezuela, this is where they're known to be. Wisconsin, Illinois, New York, obviously Texas, California, Nevada, Colorado, Florida. And you've probably heard the stories in Colorado about them reportedly taking over an apartment complex. That is 100% true. That is 100% true. And they are also taking over apartment complexes in Houston and Dallas as well. That comes right straight from the guys down there that I was talking to last week. Okay. Yeah, this is a video I got. So this is a video I shot while I was up in the helicopter. I told you it was raining when we got to the McAllen airport, right? And the helicopters couldn't land for 45 minutes. While they were up circling in the rain, McAllen PD had a pursuit. 7 bailed out of the car, but they couldn't get engaged in it because they were under visual and it was raining so hard. And when they landed and were briefing us on our behavior on the helicopter and what we were going to be doing, they told us about the pursuit. And honestly, we thought, well, there's probably not going to be a ton going on because the weather was so lousy. And this is a video I shot. This is a car chase in Footbale. There's the other helicopter. They are circling low because 7 of them ran out into this wooded area in McAllen. There's the patrol cars that were in the pursuit. While we were up in the air, they had 1 high-speed chase. They had 3 foot bails. 2 had 2 people bail. That one had 7 bail. And they had car crashes going all over the place. Here's another video that I was able to shoot. Right there are the 6 of the 7 they captured. That's video I shot from a DPS helicopter on a Monday afternoon in McAllen, Texas. One thing you can't really see real well is the Customs and Border Patrol folks. They have biometrics in their phone that does facial recognition, so they can take a picture of the folks they're interacting with, and if they've been through the system before, they will be recognized as a past contact. And that happens quite often. But again, if they're giving bad info and they're leaving their ID in Mexico, we have no idea who they are when they're coming in. There was just a news story that broke. They arrested 3 people that were members of, they were terrorists that used an app on their phone to download the Customs and Border Patrol One app, and that allows them basically a fast track to Customs and Border Patrol. Border Patrol has an app that you can download as a immigrant wanting to come into the United States, and it will give you an appearance at the border. And they just arrested this week 3, I think, from June. They came in June, and they just finally tracked them down. They were terrorists coming into America. That right there, folks, is a 50 cal sitting on the dashboard of a car. And right here is another rifle. And this guy right here has got he's got a bulletproof vest on. Okay? And right here is a police car on a traffic stop. This is nothing you would think would be in America, but this was I-10 in Phoenix, Arizona. There's your police car. That's a Texas state, or that's an Arizona state trooper. What is happening in America, you all should be outraged in. And the people that are not going to defend our borders, whether we like it or not, we are a nation of law and order. And for us to be any other way is a failure. And what they're doing to the immigrants that want to come to America and find a better life is outrageous, what they're allowing happen to these folks. And you know, I was on the plane coming back, and I happened to sit next to a captain with Customs and Border Patrol in the Rio Grande City. He was a Border Patrol agent there. And he said, "Hey, are you one of the sheriffs that came in?" And I said, "I am." And I said, "You know, I can't give you money, I can't give you manpower, but I can talk." And he said, "Tell people back in Michigan that every day, Customs and Border Patrol in Rio Grande City are getting illegals in America with fully automatic weapons every day. And they figure they're getting 15%. It's crazy. It's crazy." I asked him, I said, "What's your biggest threat? What is the biggest threat you have? What fears you? What are you afraid of the most?" And they said, "Drones." Because the cartel has a blank check. They got so much money, cash on hand. They're buying drones, and then their techs in Mexico are modifying them so they fly higher and faster than anything you've ever seen. And they said right now, the cartels still fear America a little bit in that they don't feel like they're quite where they want to drop an IED off a drone onto a group of Customs and Border Patrol agents or a group of deputy sheriffs or state troopers. They still think that would probably be frowned upon in America, but they're not far off. They're not far off. So we need to keep our law enforcement partners, federal and state and local down in Texas, in our thoughts, because they are waging a war down there every day. You know, when we were up in the helicopter for the hour and a half, like I said, it was nonstop chatter on the radio. It was a car chase here, it was a foot bail here, it was 7 people running through the woods there, it was da-da-da-da-da. And then we get back to the airport, and the pilots are like, "Oh, sorry it wasn't very exciting for you." I'm like, "Not exciting? Are you kidding me?" And they're like, "This is all day, every day. It's all day, every day going on." And the media is lying to you about what is taking place on our southern border. They're lying to you. I saw it with my own eyes. You saw what I took through my phone, except for the photo of the 50 cal on the dash and the gunfight on the river. Everything else is stuff I took. I saw it with my own eyes. And you know, I know that people were upset about me coming here tonight. I got a couple calls from a couple commissioners saying that there were people that wanted my wages suspended. They wanted me voted out of office. And quite honestly, there's people that don't want you to know what's going on. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And those people that don't want you to know are either woefully stupid or they have a nefarious intention in keeping you blind to what's going on. So I don't care what party you're part of. If you are not standing up for our national security, you need to move on. There's just no negotiating that with me as far as I'm concerned. So back to the picture I showed you at the start. These are our 12 heroes in Israel that were killed. They were among the first law enforcement officers killed. In Israel, if you are special forces, if you are like an equivalent to an Army Ranger or Delta Force or Navy SEAL, that is a law enforcement function in Israel, where in America it's military, okay? So what happened in Israel on the morning of October 7th is, obviously, you know, Hamas terrorists infiltrated Israel. Many of them were there for days and months before on work visas. They had canvassed law enforcement. When they ended up going into Israel on a Saturday, which is Shabbat, that's Israel's holy day, they went right into the police stations to the commander's office. But many of the commanders weren't there because it was Saturday. So leading up to October 7th, Hamas terrorists started taking out cameras along the border with Israel and Gaza. And then they take out a camera and then they'd sit back and watch. And Netanyahu said at the early stages of the invasion or the terrorist attack in Israel, Netanyahu acknowledged there was a colossal failure by Israel. That was one of the failures. The terrorists took out cameras and then they sat back and watched, and nobody fixed the cameras. And then they took out another camera and they sat back and watched, and nobody came to fix the cameras. This gal right here is a super cool gal. She is like the commander of she's the commander of the McAllen Customs and Border Patrol Office. McAllen has the largest contingency of Border Patrol agents, 600, along the entire southern border. They are the biggest, the biggest division there, if you will, of Border Patrol agents. The largest concentration is in McAllen. And this is us on the border. There's the wall. And there was a camera right up here. And one of the sheriffs said, how many cameras do you have along the border here in McAllen? How many cameras would you think they would have in an agency that has 600 Border Patrol agents covering, and I don't know, how big is McAllen, 120,000? Probably, it's big city, it's a big city. 11 cameras. Guess how many work? 1. And when asked about why it is the cameras aren't working, she, with a straight face, said, well, since COVID, we can't get parts. And a Border Patrol agent standing next to me, I got his picture, but I'm not going to show it. He says, dude, this is going on all the time, and we're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to talk about it. But I would think if I could get a Ring doorbell put up at my house, the federal government could protect our southern border with video cameras. And it's crazy. But this Border Patrol agent that I took the photo with, this other one, he said, you need to go back and tell people because you're being lied to. You're being lied to. And this is a federal agent. And you know, they can't talk. They can't talk on camera about what's going on. But that's the reality of what's taking place on our southern border. And I could go on and on and on with stories that I heard while I was there. It truly breaks my heart what immigrants are going through to try to find a better life, but they're not finding a better life. Not the route they're taking. And I've been honored, you know, my 12 years I've been sheriff, I partnered with Rose. We would go to migrant camps and give out car seats and visit with our migrant workers. Our community, we have to have migrant workers in our community. They're a valuable part of our community, but they deserve better. They deserve better than what the government's given them. And you deserve better. Dave said about his family and the house getting broken into. It's crazy. It's crazy what's going on. With that, I'd be happy to entertain questions.
I
Slim.
got a two-part question. One, is it true that Border Patrol is busy checking all these people in instead of guarding the border?
Yes.
And then the second part is, if somebody had the guts to stand up and do what needs to be done, what does this country need to do?
You need to elect people that are going to first and foremost secure our southern border. First and foremost, we have to have a secure southern border.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you need to figure out the immigration process. I mean, there's laws on the books, but it's got to be fixed. And if you know what, quite honestly, what I would do if I was the president of the United States, well, I wouldn't be the president of the United States, but that being said, I would get with my sheriffs and I would say, look, we're going to give the people in the country that may be here illegal and afraid to come forward, we're going to give them 6 months to find a sheriff's office and get fingerprinted and vetted. And then we'll pay you, Sheriff, we'll pay you for every set of fingerprints you take, and then we'll network with our local law enforcement. That's what I would do. Yes, sir.
Those rural areas in Mason County starting to have a problem with trespassing and squatters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have a huge homeless population in our.
People finding them in their woods and in their lawn.
Yes. Yes. Sorry? He was asking if there's a problem with squatters and homelessness in Mason County, and that's absolutely true. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll repeat the question so I can hear it. Yes, sir.
Anybody ever give you a dollar amount on what it might take to cure the problem? I mean, we divert money from here, or divert money from there. Nobody wants to pay more taxes.
Right.
What kind of money might it take?
I don't even know. The taxpayers here in Mason County were kind enough in 2018 to approve a millage for 4 additional road deputies. And you know what happened before that is we had 12 guys working the road. That was it. And a friend of mine called me one night. He lived down on Meisenheimer Road. And he calls me one day and he says, Kim, I'm really disappointed in how your office handled my call last night. And I'm like, well, tell me a story. He goes, I thought I had somebody breaking into my house at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I waited 45 minutes and it was 2 state troopers from south of Muskegon that showed up. And I'm like, what? And he goes, no deputies showed up. I said, well, you know what? I will, and Mike was his name. I said, Mike, I'll check on that and I'll get back to you. Well, come to find out, our cars were at a domestic in Walhalla when that burglary call came in. It ended up not being a burglary. It was a raccoon that fell into his window well into his basement. But I mean, to him, it was a big deal, right? I mean, you don't know that. So our guys were tied up on a domestic out in Walhalla, and I called him back and I told him that. He goes, well, what were the rest of your cars doing? I said, well, how many cars do you think we got on? He goes, Mason County, you got to have, 5, 6, 7 cars on? I'm like, man, if we have everybody working, if nobody's sick, if nobody's on vacation, if nobody's off for training, if nobody's off because they got to go before Beth in court, we have 3 cars. That's about 10% of the time. So in 2018, the taxpayers approved a millage for 4 additional deputies, and we got 3 school safety officers, school resource officers. So now we're up to 28 sworn, including myself, my undersheriff. We've been able to get some grants, but I will tell you, the state of Michigan in June cut 92% out of our school safety budget. $300 million out of $326 million they took away from us. And this will be political because it was along party lines. 56 Democrats in the House voted to cut school funding, and the governor signed it. So now we're stuck holding the bag. And I'll tell you what else. On day 2 of the Ludington schools being open, the Mason County schools being open, what happened in Georgia? Kid walked into a school and started shooting people. That was on the 2nd day of Mason County schools being in session. And they did it so kids could go to college for free. Which, people here in Mason County worked really hard, right, on the promise zone. I'm sorry, but that's wrong. That is 100% wrong to take away from mental health for our kids and school safety. It's mind-blowing, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. So I don't know what the funding looks like. Yes, sir.
thank you for bringing the public awareness to us. I live.
Thank you.
I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran. I lived in Cochise County, Arizona.
Oh, yeah, it's Sheriff Daniels County.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah. He chairs our Border Security Committee.
Mark Daniels.
Yeah.
I saw him on the national news. I know exactly what's happening. My daughters are still living there. Over 20 years I lived down there.
Yeah, Cochise County, Arizona is on the southeast corner of Arizona on the Mexican border. And Sheriff Daniels is the chair of our Border Security Committee we have.
I heard him say, tell them at Washington to come down here and we'll have a debate about the border.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask two questions,
Yes.
Sheriff Cole. How can we get better intel to law enforcement to protect our people and our nation? And that goes along with the question he asked, the first one, I think.
So how do we get
I know
better
this is
intel
a
to our
big
local law
question.
enforcement? You have to have a federal partner that's willing to share the information. And that's not always happening. That is not always happening.
I think you're doing part of it now by bringing the public awareness to the country.
You know, we try, right? But then somebody calls Janet Anderson and says, take his pay away. He's talking too much, which is stupid, but.
Thank you. What are the Border Patrol's orders currently?
So Border Patrol,
What are they allowed to do or not?
so those that are on, you're absolutely right, they are pulling them off the patrols to process more and more. But local law enforcement, the sheriff and DPS troopers are working well with Border Patrol and ICE to process people through. They are vetting them the best they can with the nations that will share criminal records. Like I said, Venezuela is not. And then they're releasing them into the country. Unless there's a reason to hold them. Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Mr. Reed.
Jim, you dared to be great from the beginning. COVID was hardly out of the box. You stood tall. You've been recognized. How do we take this shocking news tonight? I don't think there's a soul in here tonight that's listening to this. It's way out of control. So how do we take this moment with this group? You could hear a pin drop. You've all heard that noise. You could hear a pin drop in here tonight as you're presenting this. How do we take this tonight and how do we get this can open and spread this and get someone to cover it and start moving forward?
So what you do, what politicians expect the sheriff to call and rail on them, right? Vanderwall, Bumstead, they expect me to call them and be critical of their votes on things, but they don't expect citizens to call them. The people that are going to put a sign in their yard, when they call, they get attention. And I would encourage you to talk to your state politicians, your state reps, your state senators. We've got to get the money into the hands of law enforcement for school safety first and foremost. And I will tell you, we have the funding through 2026 for our school resource officers because of some grant opportunities that we got. The schools stepped up, Ludington area schools, Eastern, and the ESD. So we got 3 deputies for those schools that are part of grants. PM Township contracts our Ludington guy for the Ludington Elementary. They contract him in the summer, so that helps lighten the load on the local taxpayer. Last night, Amber Township, this isn't out there, Marco, don't say anything about this yet. But Amber Township last night voted to contract a car. Our Scottville School Resource Deputy will be working Amber Township in the summer. So, and I met with the school superintendents right before school started. And the area schools are committed to keeping school resource officers in the school. And the safety component, the security component is huge, right? And to be honest with you, when we started this, a little bit about school safety. When I was a new sheriff on December 14th, 2012, every newly elected sheriff gets to go to Lansing for 2 weeks and get training on everything, from how warm the carrots have to be before you can feed them to the inmates. Everything. It's 14, 16-hour days for 2 weeks. And I was driving back from Lansing on December 14th, 2012, And my wife called me. I was on 96 westbound by Portland. And she goes, have you heard what's happening in Newtown, Connecticut? And I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know. I don't even know there is a Newtown, Connecticut. She said, Sandy Hook Elementary School, they're killing kids. And my wife said to me, she goes, what are you going to do when evil comes to Mason County? Because the public's going to be like this, and they're going to say, Sheriff, what have you done? And that's a fair question. That's a fair criticism. And I can't explain why people walk into schools and shoot children. I don't know. I don't know. So when we started our school safety initiatives, it was all about enforcement and in protecting our kids. We know the number one deterrent to criminal behavior or bad behavior is a uniformed officer in a marked police car, right? And if any of you question that, what's the first thing you do when you're driving down the road and a sheriff car is coming at you? 55, 10 and 2, seatbelt on, because you don't want that contact, right? So it's very true. So we put our guys into schools, we wanted them in uniform, we wanted the smart cars there to protect our kids. But equally important to that is the mentorship these kids are doing. Mr. Boone's here, he's been mentoring kids for years, decades. That's huge because so many kids don't have a good family structure. They just don't have it. So that's the other part of it. So we got to get the funding and for our schools, buddy, that's what we have to do. And you need to rail on your legislators to make sure the funding's coming through.
Is there any way you can take this piece, seems to me with social media, talk about viral, we know what that means. To me, this is more viral than just about anything. We talk about the school children, no question. We probably got 8 or 10 of these critical elements going on in the country. Much worse than it was during 68, 69, 70. This is so far out there. Can you get that through your sheriffs nationally, some association?
Yeah.
And spit this out so much? And let's start getting investigative journalism done.
Right.
Let's start asking tough questions.
Right.
So everybody here cares, we all got kids and grandkids. And like somebody just said back there, somebody sneaking in a barn.
Yeah.
I mean, what's next, right? If we sit on our, let's take your courage, let's take this piece, let's get it disseminated and move.
Yeah, so I'll be in Traverse City next month. So here's the deal. As I stand here tonight, you know, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter in Tennessee. Being a grandpa is way better than being a dad ever was, right? So I have a 2-year-old granddaughter in Tennessee. Reagan is her name. And my daughter, as I stand here tonight, is expecting our second grandchild, another little girl, and she's going to be Kennedy. So I'm going to have a Reagan and a Kennedy for my granddaughters. So it should be any time. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of watching my phone to see if my wife calls. Of course, my Facebook page got locked out, so I can't even see if they're posting pictures of her on Facebook yet. But anyway, yes, sir.
Okay, there was a bipartisan border bill 6 months ago. There was enough votes to pass it. All right? Trump started making calls. They want to shut the Republicans down.
Yeah.
For one reason, he wanted to run on a border issue.
Yeah, there's plenty of blame to go around. There's no doubt.
If you want to know about it,
This is not a political.
Mitt Romney will tell you anything you want to know.
Yeah.
Just Google Mitt Romney border deal.
Yeah. The Republicans control the purse strings in Lansing or Washington, and they're not dealing with it. So, Jim.
There's a guy over in the corner over there who's got to stand up for a while.
Yes. Oh, Michael. I'm really not that good with names.
So, you know, we're hearing all the, everybody hears about the stuff that's going on in Aurora, Texas, the takeovers with the gangs and everything. What can the citizens do to help you? Because you could be easily overwhelmed with a flood of immigrants just dropping in the middle of the night here. What can citizens do to help your deputies and yourself, you know, keep an eye out, keep the knowledge base?
I'll tell you, I don't worry so much about the immigrants as I do the cartels. This year, our SWAT team has twice been in Oceana County helping the DEA on drug cartel search warrants. Twice this year we've been down there. So the best thing you can do to help me is if you see something, give us a call so we can address it and look at it. When I was in Israel, I will tell you, I was very concerned about our southern border long before I went to Israel. And I am all the more concerned now. Now, I will tell you, I'm not going to give you a lot of information, but when I was in DC in February for a National Sheriff's Board meeting and legislative meeting, the Israeli embassy came to us and spoke to us about what happened on October 7th. And when I got back from DC, I was one of the sheriffs that was able to see, and I would never watch it again. I would never encourage you, if they ever publish it, do not watch it. The Hamas terrorists wore GoPros when they raided Israel. And what they did to the Jews in Israel was, to call them animals is giving them credit. I mean, they were cutting heads off police officers and videotaping it. And they were bashing babies' heads in the cribs. And I was so upset when I flew back from DC in February. I drove from Grand Rapids right straight to my office. It was 4 o'clock. I walked into the lieutenant's office. Our SWAT team leader was in there, and I said, "How much ammo do we have in our basement?" And they said, "We don't know." And I said, "Figure it out. And I want the ammo out of the basement, and I want it into our cruisers. And we got to figure this out." So our guys have been doing a lot of high-level training to best protect you guys as citizens, and I have 100% confidence. I don't think I don't say never, but I find it highly unlikely that terrorists would come to Ludington or Mason County, because the public's just not gonna stand for that. I mean, if 15 Middle Easterns showed up and bailed out of a car on Ludington Avenue, I think people would call before ever a shot was fired. But I'll tell you what, the sheriff deputies at our office are well-trained and well-prepared, and that's not to scare you, that's to give you confidence that our guys and gals will do what needs to be done to protect you. They're not going to run the other way. 61 officers were killed the morning of October 7th in Israel. Most of them had no ammunition in their guns. Most all of them had run their guns dry. So, because in Israel, law enforcement, if you are a police officer on the streets in Israel, you only get a pistol and 2 mags. If you're part of their specialty team, you then can get rifles. I'll show you. Let's see if I can find this picture. Go ahead and somebody ask a question while I'm trying to find this. Yes, Meg.
So I'm just kind of playing this out. So we have gang members coming from Haiti and Venezuela, and they're, you talked about all the missing children, and somehow our legislators and our precious governor cut the funding for school security, but we have an increase of children come up missing in sex trafficking and the increase of drugs. So it's not only the security of in the school of stopping gun violence and things like that, but how is this going to play out as those things come into our communities? And I'm not talking about just here. We have we have families all over the state of Michigan. So going forward, these things are coming at us, and they are going to come into our communities, but we cut funding for security.
Yeah.
Nobody has our best interest at heart.
Right. That's why they need to hear from you. Our legislators need to understand they work for us. It's not the other way around. And I have a motto since I've been sheriff. My motto's been, when keeping the job is more important than doing the job, the mission's lost. And part of our mission statement at the sheriff's office says we will do what is right regardless of the cost. And that cost isn't financial, that cost is political, that cost is social acceptance. We had a rally at City Park a couple years ago during the George Floyd unrest. I had nothing in common with the people who threw that rally, but I had to honor their right to do that because it's their right. You got the right to say things that I don't agree with, and that's more important than anything else. Yes, ma'am.
Can we talk locally? So, how many illegal immigrants has the sheriff's department arrested
Human trafficking is human trafficking is very real here in Mason County. We've done a couple stings. We were part of Genesee County came in with their GHOST team, and we did some human trafficking last year during fair. And our detective, Kyle Boyd, one of our upcoming young men in our office, he's just a rock star. He wanted to do this human trafficking, and I said, Kyle, go for it. We'll pay the overtime. Yes, yeah, we're part of the human trafficking task force here in Mason and Oceana County. Our guys get trained in that, identifying people that may be trafficked. We're gonna work on getting business owners to identify young people that maybe are being trafficked. So that'll be the next phase. But we arrested, what was it, Beth, 4 or 5 that day we did that sting? 4. Yeah, Kyle wanted to do it. I said, Kyle, I'll pay the overtime. We'll get guys in to do it, but you're not gonna have any luck. 15 minutes into them chatting online, they had a guy that was thinking he was coming to Ludington to have sex with a 14-year-old girl. So, and that's what he said. Yeah. Oh, the illegals. So we don't have very much contact with illegals. Our farmers do a really good job, and this is something you can jump up and down on your congressmen and your U.S. senators about. So our farmers have to pay, they enroll in the H-2A program. So they have to pay for background checks to be done on migrant workers, and it's expensive. And they're not making a ton of money to begin with. So if we can get some help to our farmers through federal loans or federal grants or whatever they do, so that we have very few problems with our immigrants here in Mason County. Way less than we did when I worked the road, 20 years ago. So I'm going to take some more questions, but this picture right here is a photo from my next presentation on Israel. These are 6 Israeli police officers, and they're about to be killed. Pistol at the low ready. Those of you who know anything about firearms, pistol at the low ready, pistol on the hood of the patrol car, pistol up over the roof of the car. He's drawing his pistol. He's got his pistol ready. This guy's reloading his pistol. These 3 cars right here are Hamas terrorists with rifles. They would all be killed right after that video was shot. So, you had a question? Yes, sir.
I was going to ask, in one part of your presentation, you had showed that Wisconsin has a certain crime for members. How does that affect how they come to Michigan through either the Badger or
Yeah, once they get into the country, they can roam free wherever they want to go. So, yes, 100%. So he's asking about the TDA gangs, the Trans-Diago gangs that are in Wisconsin, and if they could come across on the boat. 100% they could come across on the boat. Again, we would need eyes and ears in the community to be, and I think we have a good relationship with our community here. Our law enforcement folks do. I think the deputies have earned the respect of the community, and there's a trust there where people can talk. So call. If you see something that doesn't look right, call. I had a guy come and see me last summer. He said, I'm kicking myself because I know there were 2 MS-13 gang members in a restaurant because I saw the MS-13 tattoos on the neck. And my wife said, you need to call the sheriff, and they never did. He came in like 2 or 3 days later. Yes, sir.
Besides the community, looking out for people coming out and off the Badger, is there a system in place to check if these people
No, you can pay for a ticket to get on the boat, and there's no vetting process once you get on the boat. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is the United States Border Patrol or United States government having conversations with the authorities on the Mexican side because of all the terrorist countries coming across the southern border? And there is some conversation going on. I don't know to what level. And I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I hope there's no FBI guys in here, but we get very little information out of the feds. Very little information. I don't know why that is. And Marco, you can't report that? But we don't get much. I mean, the local agents in Grand Rapids have been good to work with, but coming out of Washington and what's going on down there, we don't hear much. Yes, sir. Dave.
You stated that the drug cartel is in Oceana County.
Right.
They're trying to make their roads into Mason County.
We have not seen them up here yet, although it wouldn't surprise me that they're traveling through our area. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I've watched you work with elementary kids, I watch you tonight, everything that's going on. I want to get back to what you've done and what Dave's done and the rest of you. It's tremendous. But what Buddy said earlier is how do we get this type of thing out to other people? I am no longer a Mason County resident, I live in Grand Rapids area. And there are other people I'm sure that want to come here.
Is your boy still flying helicopters? Is he? Good for him.
But anyways, I really want, somehow, somebody has to
Well,
move this forward so that we can get it out.
I'll tell you what, I would be willing, if this presentation is something you think you have a group of people outside of here that might want to hear it, I'd be more than willing to go wherever you need me to go and share the word with what we're doing. I mean, I would be more than happy to do that. It's, again, I pay for my own gas. I can do it in the evenings, even though I'm on duty 24/7, 365 days a year. I get no vacation time. I get no sick time. I'm a straight salary guy. But I know there's people that are upset about it, and I don't know why you would be upset about just learning the plight of what is going on. But there are people that feel that way. So yes, sir.
So you mentioned visiting migrant camps and
Mhm.
helping some of that out. How can we as a community support those immigrants that are already
Yeah.
here and build up our community more than where it is already?
So I'll tell you what, Rose is kind of retired, but she was the gal that was our interpreter when we would go. If you're an interpreter or you know somebody that can speak, let me know. We'd be more than happy to visit the camps and foster those relationships with our migrants. They're valuable part of our community. And otherwise, just give them a break, you know? I mean, we get calls, not all the time anymore, but you know, when 8 or 10 Hispanics walk into Walmart, people get all fired up about that, and they're just trying to get food. They're not. And I'll tell you what, if they're there, if they're here in Mason County, with 90% confidence, I'm telling you, they're here. They've been vetted, and they're here because they're supposed to be here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, speaking on that point there, I was in the store a couple of days ago, and there was about 3 bus schools, and I know they were language.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to be lights and ears to help your department.
Sure.
Without being stereotypical.
Mhm. Yeah, you know, that's a challenge, right? I mean, when the San Bernardino shootings happened, remember that at the Christmas party? What did the neighbors say that where those 2 terrorists lived, the guy and the girl? Remember they got in the gunfight with the police, and they said, you know, we thought they were making bombs in their garage, but they were, you know, they were Middle Eastern, and we didn't want to be labeled racist. Well, you know, you got to do what you got to do sometimes, and you got to just be willing to take that hit. You know, I think I've been called all kinds of things, right? And I just don't care anymore. I don't worry what people think about me. That's okay. I know in my heart the kind of person I am. I'm not a racist. I don't dislike gay people or anything like that. But we have to do what we have to do is right. And if it means calling and making an uncomfortable call, that's what we have to do. But it kind of sucks we live in the world we live in. It really does. Yes. Yes.
As you said, I live in my state.
This is Rose. Those of you who don't know, this is Rose. Rose and I partnered to go to the migrant camps with our deputies to foster relations.
Well, actually, we started in 2001 with a program called Project Espeto. And what that was a program that was to build a relationship between the migrant worker and the law enforcement. Because there was a lot of misunderstanding on both populations. Law enforcement didn't understand the migrant worker, and the migrant worker were afraid. So that happened back then, and we kind of quit doing it really for the last maybe 5 years. But before that, we were very active. Kim and his guys always went with us to the camp visits and got to meet the workers. And with that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I understand about what Kim's saying right now. And I hope you don't mind, Kim, that okay. First of all, the border, cartel is there, gangs are there, and we can't stop it. There's no way that you can stop somebody, like this gentleman over here was saying, do they stop them? Do they check to see if they're here? But are they legally, are they being good? No, we don't get to see that until tragedy happens. So the border, I have family that works for the Border Patrol. And those guys are in so much danger because they're actually face to face with cartel all the time. But, you know, we are here in Mason County, and yes, we have problems. Yes, there's a lot of rumors, a lot of things about what the migrant worker stands for. And I have to tell you that that's what I want to say a little bit about. I worked for the state for almost 30 years as an employment specialist. And I was working with a migrant worker and the employers in the county, making sure that they got the workers. In the early 2000s, something happened and we ended up not having enough workers. And so it was really hard. But some of these workers, even through COVID, worked in the fields because that's what they come and do here. The workers that you see in the stores, they're out there because they're here for the summer and they're working really hard. They were out there through COVID when we were all quarantined. So that's the story with them. Now the buses that you were talking about, sir, those are all H-2A workers. Now, I retired from the state 2 years ago and immediately got into the H-2A program. Why? Because I believed in it. And the reason I believed in it is because these guys come here. And I actually work for Purpose Point Harvesting in Weirs, which is right there by Hart. By the time those guys come here, they have gone through a process. They don't just come in with no immunizations or, you know, and they're being checked to see if they're criminals. All that is taken care of before these guys come here. While they're here, and I will speak for our company because now I belong to the family with Purpose Point Harvesting, and I call it family because we all become family with so much that we take care of with these guys. These guys come here, my bosses are amazing. They make sure they have food, they make sure they have everything they need. During the time that they're here, they're being taken care of. And I mean by that is that there's rules and regulations that they have to follow. They don't just come in here and roam the streets. Our guys aren't even allowed to really do very much other than come to work. There's no partying, there's no drinking, there's none of that out there in the camps. Because they're being monitored. So the ideal thing for us at this point was to have H-2A workers. It is really hard on the growers because it is expensive. It is expensive, but right now this is happening and I don't know how much longer it can happen because it's getting more expensive. Now that's another whole problem. But still, these workers are here to do a job and they're not the problem. The migrant workers that Kim is talking about before, they were families that came in here. I was a migrant child. We traveled to work in other states, so I know what it's like. Irma, over here, we all know the life of a migrant worker. And that's why we took, you know, our positions that we did to be able to help those people. Those people would come work and go home. Now these workers with H-2A, they come work and they go home. The ones that are caught in the middle are people that are undocumented. And they're the biggest victims of the cartel. The biggest victims. Now what can we do here? Keep our eyes open and, you know, hear, you know, what's going on. You see something that really is wrong, here's a man to talk to because he's going to take care of it. But you know, I think to me, the reason I wanted to speak was because I wanted you to understand there is people you should be afraid of, cartel, people that don't care about life. They murder somebody like this if they don't do what they want, or they're done with them. There's a lot of human trafficking going on. There's a lot of that. Like I said, he asked, are they checking the Badger with these people that get on it? No. Just like I've never been on the Badger, but everybody that's been on the Badger here, have they asked you for things just to get on the boat? No. So that happens everywhere. Unless there's a reason, as U.S. citizens, we have the right to them for them not to do that to us, right? But it also affects when these people are getting in amongst us. Now, the homeless population, a lot of those people are here because they really are homeless. Are they dangerous? Some of them might be, some of them are not. So we can't blame all these things to them. But these things that are bad is people that come from other countries that are evil. That's what we need to worry about. So I just wanted to say a little bit about this because I feel that we're on the right track, but we're not. Because we really have to see what the problem really is.
Yeah.
And
So-
it isn't the migrant camps out there most of the time, and there is some cartel that gets in there too. There's drugs coming in there too. But this is
Yeah.
where Kevin and his
Yeah.
deputies need to go,
You should-
the state police, and people reporting it. With Project Espeto, we made sure that people knew that if there was domestic violence, any violence in the camps, that they were to report.
Yeah, Project Respecto started in Mason County and it went nationwide. It was a national program. MSP took it over, the state police took it over because they had a bigger pocketbook, and they took it. It was all over the nation. But anyway, Rose is absolutely right. The cartels control the southern border. They have unlimited resources. They got unlimited funding. They got unlimited tools, and you can see they got firepower. 50 cals on dashboards of cars driving by state troopers on traffic stops. They're not afraid. And it's no sheriff likes to admit they've ever lost anything, but your Texas sheriffs will tell you they've lost control of the southern border. Yes?
One question, or it's more of an observance. Maybe it would be useful for you to add maybe a slide or two more to your presentation with the tattoo markings and how to identify the
Yeah.
cartel. And,
Yeah, we could certainly do that. I wanted to be respectful of everybody's time. I promised an hour, and I was done in 45 minutes, and now we're into question time. So, but yeah, you're right. But I wanted you to understand in my presentation that all this stuff I showed you is stuff that I took.
Yeah.
It's photos I took or videos I took or permission I had from those that shot it directly to use it. And you know, the thing that got me was the snake. I'm not a snake guy, but that's a big snake. Yes, Rebecca.
So I know there's been talk, and I agree with what Buddy was saying about, getting this out there and getting this good in the community, but I have a question. You do go to a lot of public meetings, township meetings, county commissioner meetings, and I go to some of those too. I live down in Oceana County. For citizen involvement, how important do you feel it is that citizens attend those meetings?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like there's a lot of...
Absolutely. Yeah, the very first township meeting I went to where there was a lot of people was Victory. Any Victory Township people? All right. So I went to Victory Township, and the parking lot was packed, and there's never anybody at these township meetings, and I'm like, well, something's going to happen. And they were on it about the junk ordinance, I think it was, and I walked in and kapow about junk ordinance stuff. So get involved with your townships, get involved with your counties. It's okay to do. And hold people accountable. I think we need to hold people accountable that we send to Washington and Lansing. I'll get to you here in a second, Jim, and I'll get to you in a second, real quick. So when I go to Washington, D.C., I always reach out to either Molinar or Huizenga and ask if I can sit down with them, and I go there representing people in our community. So last time I was in Washington, I contacted Molinar, and I talked to David Hackert from Hackert Farms. I said, I'm having breakfast with Molinar. What do you want me to tell him? And it was about H2A, and it was about the funding and how expensive it is. So I'll be going back in February to Washington, and I'm going to take some of my staff with me. And I'm going to have a couple of those staff members do nothing but talk to community members and talk to our elected officials in Washington about concerns we have here in Mason County. Business owners, farmers, Visitors Bureau, whatever, so we can get the word to Washington on what's going on. So, yeah, Jim.
Going back when you were talking about squatters and people in barns and places around there, I guess maybe I lived in Iraq, but I didn't know there was a homeless camp behind Goodwill.
Yes.
I didn't know there was a homeless camp north of Myers.
Right.
And I heard there was one south of Walhalla by Lake Hall.
Mhm.
Have you guys gone into these camps?
Yes.
See what the makeup of these camps are, who they are?
Yeah, we almost always get somebody on a warrant out of those camps when we go there. Usually somebody's wanted in those camps. They're just trying to lay low and stay off the police radar. So when we get, and the other thing we have to be cognizant of is private property. If the property owner doesn't mind them being there, and that does happen from time to time, rare, but it does happen. We got to make sure we have standing to be there. Our prosecutor will tell you when law enforcement does anything, the very first thing the court's going to ask is what was your standing? In other words, what authority did you have to be there? So we got to make sure we're cognizant of that. I saw a hand over here.
Do you
Yes.
actually have illegals in those camps that I know of, right?
No.
Not at all.
Not that we've had any contact with.
I saw that you have in your videos a lot of subdivisions and
Mhm.
nice homes right on the river.
Yeah.
Are those occupied or have people
Yeah.
fled the area?
No, down in McAllen, beautiful homes in McAllen. I would suspect there's money in McAllen. So the question was, there's a lot of beautiful homes in the videos I showed you. Those are people's homes. They live there year round, I would suspect, and they're very nice houses, yeah.
So they haven't left, they haven't had like
No.
people moving out of the area?
No.
Some have had to quit their jobs and
Well,
stay
there,
home.
so there are some, this is one thing I didn't hit on. So the question was, are these houses allowing cartels to stay there? There are buildings in McAllen, warehouses that they suspect they're funneling humans to and then out of. And those are often bought with cash by the cartels. But by the time the police are onto them, they're off to another building and renting another warehouse. Yes, sir.
You're referring to the money that was allocated for safety of children in the schools.
Correct.
That we lost there, 92,000. Did I understand you to say that went to paying for?
Free college. Part of it went, it was 300 million they took out of 326 million budgeted. They took 300 million, which was 92% of that budget. Yeah, and it was mental health and school safety.
All of us feel, what can we do to help promote our cause? If we just, each one of us talk to 2 or 3 other people, and hopefully
Right.
we can do that without making a political polarization.
Right.
Perhaps that would go a long ways to help.
Yeah, talk to people, and again, if, I know some people are having to leave or maybe taking another piece of pizza, that's good too. But if any of you want me to speak at a group you may have, please reach out. Let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that. I am flying. I booked an airline ticket today for the 9th of October. My wife is, like I said, in Tennessee right now, and Grandpa's just going to get in the way of the new baby. So I'm going to give it a couple weeks, and then I'm going to fly down just for 3 days, and I'll be back the following Monday. But
Can we start a fund to donate to your cause?
you pay taxes. No, you don't need to. No.
You shouldn't have to pay out of your pocket.
No. That's fine. I don't mind. I'm at a different phase in my life. I don't have any kids living at home, and I just save my money for my grandkids now. So, But I will tell you this. We're all at different phases in our life, and I went down Labor Day weekend. I went down for like 4 days to be with Reagan before she became a big sister, and we had to share her with, her little sister. And for me to drive to Tennessee and pay $3 for a gallon of gas isn't a big deal, right? It isn't a big deal for me, but I get where other people it is. And I will tell you, I have family members that struggle financially. My son being one. He's making $22 an hour driving truck for Standard Lumber in Grand Rapids, and he lives in Spring Lake, so he drives 40 minutes one way to work. And when gas was $2 a gallon, he was getting by. At $3 a gallon, he's eating ramen noodles, and that's ridiculous. So this is why I've been pretty vocal. For the first 10 years I was a sheriff, I never said anything political. But it just chaps my hind end that you got a guy making $22 an hour that's not getting by. That should not happen. So, and it's Groundhog's Day. If we keep sending the same people back to Lansing and back to Washington, it's Groundhog's Day. Right. So that's why I've decided to do what I do. I do it for my son and my kids and those other young people that are making $18, $19 an hour and not getting by, and somehow that's acceptable, because it's not.
I just want to say one thing to everybody. Everybody here has one vote. We control who goes to Washington, we control who goes to Lansing, we control who's down at the Ludington City Commission. We